You did not stop here by accident. Out of everything competing for your attention right now, out of every distraction, every notification, every voice pulling you in a different direction, something inside you paused. Something quiet but certain brought you to this exact moment. And if you have learned anything about the way life works, you already know that the things which feel like coincidence rarely are. This is not a coincidence. There is something happening in invisible space between you and someone who has been trying and failing to convince themselves that you are gone, that you have moved on, that the chapter with your name in it has been closed, folded, and placed somewhere they no longer have to feel. They have been telling themselves a story, a very necessary story, a story that helps them get through morning without reaching for their phone, a story that helps them sit in a room full of people without scanning for your face. But here is what Carl Jung understood that most people never will. The psyche does not lie to protect you forever. It lies to protect you until you are ready for the truth. And for the person who has been rehearsing the story that you have moved on, that rehearsal is cracking, right now, in ways they cannot explain, and are not yet ready to admit. You are not a memory they have filed away. You are a presence they are still negotiating with. And what is about to happen next, what is already beginning to move beneath the surface of their carefully constructed silence, is something you need to understand before it arrives at your door. Because if you are not prepared for it, you will misread it. You will minimize it. You will second-guess something that deserves your full, quiet confidence. So stay here. What you are about to hear is not flattery. It is not wishful thinking dressed in beautiful language. It is the psychology of the human soul doing exactly what Carl Jung spent his entire life mapping, breaking through the walls we build, because the truth is always stronger than the story we tell to survive it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jungian Love Codes. Please remember to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and select all notifications, because every single video on this channel has the power to shift how you think, how you feel, and how you see yourself. Now, let's get into what you came here for. You have been carrying something quietly, not loudly, not in a way that makes other people stop and ask if you are all right. You have become remarkably good at carrying it the way people carry things they have decided to stop explaining, tucked into the part of your chest that you keep moving forward from, because standing still inside it for too long costs too much. Maybe you stop being the one who always reached first. Maybe you stop sending the message you drafted at midnight and deleted by morning. Maybe you stopped making yourself small enough to fit into a space that was never designed to hold all of you comfortably. And when you finally stepped back, when you finally chose the dignity of silence over the exhaustion of chasing, the world saw it as moving on. They saw it as moving on. But you know what it actually was? It was not indifference. It was not healing completed. It was not the clean, cinematic kind of letting go that people post about with soft lighting and inspirational captions. It was survival. It was a decision to stop bleeding in front of someone who had stopped asking if you were okay. It was a quiet, devastating act of protecting what was left of yourself when you realized that waiting was costing you in ways you could no longer afford. Carl Jung wrote about what he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we push beneath the surface because they are too painful, too complicated, or too honest to live in the light. And here is what is true about the person you've been thinking about. The love they have for you did not disappear. It did not dissolve. It did not cooperate with their decision to let you go. It went into the shadow. It went underground. And things that go underground in the psyche do not stay quiet. They grow louder. They grow heavier. They push upward in the middle of ordinary moments, in the middle of a drive home, in the middle of a conversation with someone new, in the middle of a night that was supposed to be peaceful. They think you have moved on, and that thought is doing something to them that they were not prepared for. There is a specific kind of psychological reckoning that happens when someone who chose distance begins to feel the weight of what that distance actually cost them. It does not announce itself dramatically. It does not arrive as a sudden epiphany with clarity and resolve attached to it. It arrives as restlessness. It arrives as a low, persistent discomfort that sits just beneath every distraction they reach for, the television left on too loud, the plans made too quickly, the sleep that comes late and leaves early. This is what is happening inside them right now. Carl Jung described the individuation process, the journey toward becoming whole, as something the psyche pursues relentlessly, regardless of what the ego wants. And what the ego of this person wanted was simplicity, distance, the clean story, the version of events where they made a rational decision, you adjusted, and life continued neatly for everyone involved. The ego built that story carefully, reinforced it, repeated it to friends, to family, perhaps even to someone new who was supposed to be the proof that the chapter was closed. But the self, Jung's term for the deeper, truer layer of who we are beneath the ego's management, the self does not accept false conclusions. It keeps the account open. It keeps returning to the unfinished thing, pressing against it, asking questions the ego cannot answer satisfactorily. Questions like, why does a song still do that? Why does a specific time of day still carry that particular weight? Why does a name, glimpsed accidentally on a screen or heard in passing conversation, still land with that much force inside a chest that was supposed to be moved on? They cannot answer those questions honestly without arriving at you. And here is what you need to understand about this moment. The moment when someone realizes that moving on from you is not as finished as they announced. It does not make them immediately reach out. It does not instantly produce the conversation you may have imagined. What it produces first is a period of internal negotiation that is deeply uncomfortable for them. They begin to audit what they told themselves. They begin to measure the distance between the story and the truth. They begin to feel something Jung identified as a tension of opposites, the psyche holding two contradictory truths at the same time and straining under the weight of it. The truth that they chose to walk away, and the truth that walking away did not work the way they needed it to. You are living in the pause between those two truths right now, and that pause, as uncertain as it feels where you're standing, is not empty. It is not silence. It is the sound of something real beginning to move again, something they tried to put down, something that refused to stay where they left it, something that has your name on it. There are signs, and they are not the dramatic, obvious kind that announce themselves with grand gestures or tearful confessions. They are quieter than that, more subtle, the kind of signs that only make sense when you understand what Carl Jung understood about the way the unconscious mind expresses what the conscious mind refuses to admit. Watch for this. They have been checking on you, without making contact, not with a message, not with a call, but in the small, traceable ways that modern life makes unavoidable. A view that lingered a moment too long. A mutual friend mentioned casual in conversation when your name did not need to be there. A question dropped softly into the air that was really just a way of asking about you, without having to ask about you. They are gathering information about a life they told themselves they were no longer invested in. And the gathering itself is the evidence. They pause on your name, not metaphorically, literally, when it appears anywhere in their world, in a contact list, in an old photograph, in the caption of something shared by someone you both know. There's a pause that their body produces before their mind can intervene, a half-second of stillness, a breath that changes quality. This is the unconscious recognition Jung wrote about, the psyche identifying something as classified as significant, as unresolved, as still carrying emotional charge, before the rational mind has a chance to redirect. They compare. This is perhaps the most telling sign of all, and it is the one they would be most reluctant to confess. Anyone new in their life, anyone who has entered the space that was supposed to represent forward movement, is being held up against you in ways that are neither fair to that person nor comfortable for them. Not because they are cruel, but because the psyche is ruthlessly honest in its private assessments. It measures, it notices what is missing. It registers a specific quality of what you brought, the particular way you listened, the specific warmth you carried, the precise combination of depth and presence that was yours, and it finds the absence of those things even when it is surrounded by something new. They are having conversations with you that you are not present for. This is perhaps the most Jungian reality of everything happening inside them right now. In the psychological framework Jung developed around the anima and animus, the inner representations we carry of the significant people in our emotional lives. When someone has loved you with real depth, your image does not leave their inner world simply because the outer relationship changed. You became part of their internal cast, and that internal version of you is still speaking to them, still present in the quiet moments, still sitting across from them in the dreams they wake from and try not to examine too carefully in the full light of morning. They are not over you. They are performing being over you. And there's an enormous, exhausting difference between those two things that their body understands even when their mind refuses to. Here is something that needs to be said clearly, without softening and without condition. The love you gave was not ordinary. It was not the surface level, convenient kind that shows up when everything is easy and disappears when the weight becomes real. What you brought to that connection, the depth of your attention, the sincerity of your care, the way you stayed present in moments when leaving would have been easier, that is not something that can be replaced by proximity or distraction or time alone. People who love the way you love leave a specific kind of mark. Carl Jung spoke about what he called the transcendent function, the capacity of the psyche to hold tension between opposites and move towards something higher, something more integrated, something truer than either extreme alone. The person who walked away from you is living inside that tension right now. On one side, the story they constructed, the reasons they rehearsed, the distance they decided was necessary. On the other side, the memory of what it actually felt like to be loved by you, to be seen by you, to be in the presence of someone who brought something genuine into the world and offered it without calculation. That tension does not resolve itself quietly. It demands attention. And you need to understand, truly understand, not just hear as a comforting idea, but absorb as fact, that the reason this tension exists inside them is not weakness. It is not confusion. It is the psyche doing its most honest work, returning again and again to what carried real weight, refusing to classify as ordinary something that was never ordinary. You were someone who saw deeply. You were someone who stayed when staying was difficult, who gave when giving was costly, who chose vulnerability when every safe instinct said to protect yourself instead. And whether or not the person who received all of that recognized its value in the moment, the psyche records everything. It keeps a ledger the ego has no access to, and that ledger right now is being quietly reviewed. Do not let the silence of this period convince you that your love was unremarkable. The silence is not indifference. The silence is the sound of someone sitting with the weight of what they walked away from and beginning, slowly, uncomfortably, without yet knowing what they plan to do about it. To feel how heavy that weight actually is. You were not too much. You were not too intense, too deep, too feeling, too present. You were exactly what the human heart recognizes as rare when it is honest with itself. And rare things do not get forgotten. They get thought about in the quiet. They get returned to in the moments when the noise of distraction finally fails. They get missed with a specific, particular ache that ordinary things do not produce. That ache has your name on it. Before we go further, if this is resonating with something you've been carrying, if these words are landing in a place inside you that needed to hear them, I want you to take 1 second right now. Subscribe to Jungian Love Codes if you have not already, and hit that bell so you never miss a video. Every single upload on this channel is designed to give you the psychological clarity and emotional grounding you deserve, because understanding what is happening beneath the surface of your connections changes everything about how you move through them. You deserve that understanding. Now let us keep going, because what comes next is the part that is going to shift something real inside you. Here is what happens next, not as a wish, not as a hope decorated in spiritual language, to make waiting feel more bearable, as a psychological reality that Jung mapped with precision and that human behavior confirms again and again across every culture, every generation, every variation of the same essential story. When the internal negotiation reaches its peak, when the tension between the story they told and the truth they feel becomes too heavy to carry without acknowledgement, something shifts in their behavior. It is not always a conversation you have imagined. It does not always arrive in the form you have been rehearsing, but it arrives. And when it does, it carries a quality that is unmistakable, a quality of weight, of sincerity, of something that has been held for a long time finally being set down in the open. They will reach back, not recklessly, not with the careless energy of someone who has not thought carefully about what they are doing, but with the particular deliberateness of someone who has been thinking about it longer than they would like to admit, who has rehearsed the words, who has picked up a phone and put it down more times than they counted before finally deciding that the cost of continued silence is higher than the risk of reaching out. When this moment comes, and it is coming, it is already in motion beneath a surface that may look completely still from where you're standing. You'll feel it before it arrives. This is not mysticism. This is what Jung called synchronicity, the experience of meaningful coincidence that signals the psyche's awareness of something shifting in the relational field between two people. You will think of them at an unusual hour, and the thought will carry a different quality than the ones before it. Something steadier, something that feels less like longing and more like knowing. Pay attention to that, because what follows the internal breakthrough is a period of testing, not of you, but of themselves. They will send something small, something that can be explained away as casual if you do not respond the way they are hoping. A reference to something shared, a question that does not need to be asked, a reach that is small enough to retreat from if it is not met, but large enough to mean everything if it is. This is the ego protecting itself while the self tries to move forward. The two systems working at cross purposes in the most achingly human way. And here is what Jung would tell you about this moment. Do not shrink yourself to make their testing easier. Do not perform casualness you do not feel. Do not respond to the small gesture with the enormous speech you have been composing internally for months. Respond with presence, with warmth, with the quiet confidence of someone who's been doing their own internal work and who does not need the reaching to define their worth, but who is willing to meet it honestly when it comes. This is not about strategy. This is not about playing a role or managing an impression. This is about being so genuinely settled in who you are, so rooted in the self-worth you've been rebuilding in the silence of this waiting period, that when they reach back, what they encounter is not desperation and not indifference, but something far more powerful than either. They encounter you, whole, present, unmoved by the time that passed, because you use that time to become more fully yourself rather than less. That is the version of you they are reaching back toward. That is the version they have been negotiating with in the silence of their own unquiet mind. That is what happens next. There is something you need to do before this arrives at your door, and it has nothing to do with them. This is the part that most people skip. The internal preparation that determines whether a returning connection becomes something genuinely transformed or simply a repetition of the same painful cycle wearing a more hopeful costume. Carl Jung was unambiguous about this. He wrote that we do not attract what we want. We attract what we are. And the version of you that waits passively, that keeps one ear permanently pressed against the silence listening for footsteps, that measures its own worth by whether or not the reaching happens, that version will receive a different outcome than the version of you that used this time to do something quietly extraordinary. So let's talk about what that looks like. First, release the audit. You know the one, the endless internal review of every moment, every word, every decision that preceded the distance between you, the question of what you could have done differently, what you should have said instead, what version of yourself might have produced a different outcome. Jung called this kind of rumination the ego's attempt to control retroactively what it could not control in the moment. And it is costing you energy you need for something far more important than reconstructing the past with better hindsight. What happened is not the whole story. It is one chapter. And chapters do not determine endings. Second, choose yourself with the same seriousness you once chose them. This is not a platitude. This is a psychological directive. The individuation process that Jung described as a central task of human life, the journey toward becoming fully, authentically yourself, does not pause while you wait for someone else to recognize your value. It continues. And every day you invest in your own clarity, your own healing, your own becoming, you are doing two things simultaneously. You are building a self that is genuinely worth returning to, and you are releasing the energetic desperation that pushes away the very thing it most wants. Stop performing indifference and start inhabiting peace. These are not the same thing, and the difference between them is felt immediately by anyone who comes near you. Performed indifference is a costume, and costumes are exhausting to maintain and unconvincing up close. Inhabited peace is a state, and it is produced not by pretending you do not feel, but by feeling everything fully, processing it honestly, and arriving on the other side of it with your self-worth intact. Third, and this is perhaps the most important instruction of everything said in this video today, do not make yourself available in the old way before you have become something new. If they return and find the same dynamic, the same patterns, the same unspoken agreements that produced the distance in the first place, nothing will have changed except the calendar. What you are preparing for is not a reunion. It is a renegotiation. A meeting between two people who have both been changed by the time apart. Changed enough that what comes next to be built on something real rather than something familiar. Familiar is not the same as right. Familiar is just well practiced, what you deserve. What is moving toward you in the space between their silence and your becoming is something that does not require you to be less than whole in order to make it work. Prepare for that, not for them, for the version of this that you actually deserve. Let us speak about what is coming, not in vague, decorative language that sounds beautiful but lands nowhere. In the specific, grounded terms of what a genuinely transformed connection feels like when it arrives after the kind of growth this period has been demanding of both of you. This would not feel like the anxious love you have known before. That is the first thing to understand. The love that is approaching. The version of this connection that emerges from the other side of everything that has happened will not carry a particular electricity of uncertainty that you may have confused with passion in the past. It will not make you feel simultaneously chosen and terrified. It will not require you to hold your breath waiting to find out if today is a good day or a difficult one. It will feel like arriving somewhere. Carl Jung wrote about the concept of the syzygy, the union of opposites within the psyche, the integration of the inner masculine and feminine, the coming together of two individuated people who meet not out of need, but out of genuine recognition. This is what you are being prepared for, not a love that completes you because you were incomplete, but a love that reflects you because you are whole. When they come back, with the weight of genuine reckoning behind their eyes and the particular humility of someone who has sat with the truth of what they walked away from, you will notice something different in how it feels to be near them. The defensiveness will be quieter. The posturing will be gone. What replaces it is something that Jung student Eric described as the active practice of love. Not a feeling that happens to you, but a choice that is made again and again with full awareness of its cost and its value. They will see you differently. Not because you changed for them, but because they changed enough to see clearly. They will support what you are building. They will ask about the things that matter to you with genuine curiosity rather than polite performance. They will show up in the small, undramatic, deeply reliable ways that mean more than grand gestures ever could. Because grand gestures are easy and consistency is the actual language of love. There will be a moment, quiet, unremarkable from the outside, where you are simply in the same space together, and something inside your chest settles in a way it has not settled in a very long time. No anxiety underneath it. No waiting for the other shoe. Just a clean, steady warmth of being with someone who chose you consciously, who understands what you are worth because they spent time in the absence of it learning exactly that. That moment is what all of this has been building toward. Not the dramatic reconciliation scene, not the tearful confession, but that quiet moment of arrival where two people who went to the fire of separation and used it to become more themselves finally sit down together in the peace of something real. That is what is coming. That is what you have been worth all along. You are not someone easy to forget. This needs to be the thing you carry with you from this video, not as a comforting idea you reach for when the doubt gets loud, but as a settled, internal knowledge that does not require external confirmation to remain true. The love you gave was real. The depth you brought was rare. The particular quality of your presence in that connection was something that does not get replicated by simply finding someone new and giving time its chance to work. You left a mark that is still speaking. Carl Jung spent his life studying the deepest layers of the human psyche, and what he found, again and again, beneath all the defenses and all the constructed stories and all the careful management of image and ego, was this: the human soul knows what it loves. It knows with a certainty the mind cannot always access and cannot always explain. And the soul of the person who has been rehearsing the story of your absence knows what it lost. Trust the process that is already in motion, not with the trembling trust of someone who has no choice but to hope, but with the grounded trust of someone who understands the psychology of what is happening, who has done the inner work this period was asking for, and who knows that what is meant to meet you will meet you exactly where you are standing when you are standing in the fullness of yourself. Keep choosing your own peace over the noise of uncertainty. Keep releasing the awe of the past and investing the energy in the becoming of your present. Keep holding the self-respect that makes you worth returning to, not because it's a strategy, but because you have earned it and you deserve to live inside it without apology. The love that costs you your dignity was never the love you deserved. and the love that is moving toward you now, slowly, honestly, with a particular weight of something real, will not ask that price. Before you go, if this channel has given you something today, if these words have landed somewhere that needed them, please subscribe to Jungian Love Codes, hit the bell, and select all notifications. Every video on this channel is built to give you the psychological depth and emotional clarity to navigate your connections with wisdom, with self-worth, and with the understanding that you were never ordinary, and neither is what is coming for you.